Recording it.
Welcome to DXgov governance discussion for March 31st. Starting first with the proposal roundup. A bunch of proposals in the queue on both mainnet and XDAI. On mainnet, starting first, there are 6 proposals boosted or pending boosting. And that pending boosting number may include ones that transactions have been sent but not yet confirmed. But the 3 proposals on mainnet, one, deposit 300 ETH in Swapper mainnet. That passes, I think, in 36 hours. And so this is the second deposit into Swapper mainnet from the Treasury, and it'll go into the ETH DAI pair there, and this will go through the liquidity relayer, which is still controlled by the multi-sig, but that'll be another, I think that'll bring it to like $600,000 in Treasury liquidity into Swapper on mainnet. And then there's 3 different Treasury diversification proposals, all for 100 ETH, 2 for SUSD, 1 for USDT. We'll talk about Treasury in a little bit because there's been some good conversations there. Another member balancer gen reimbursement to transfer from mainnet to XDAI. And then there is the halt the DXD bonding curve proposal. So this was submitted last week by Augusto. John had looked at it. I had looked at it. I ran some tests, kind of evaluated. Everything looks good. Obviously, this is a huge change to DXD, and so it's important to be diligent about it. I just as an update, I submitted a staking proposal about 2 hours ago, and I think gas prices moved on me right then, and I even sped it up, and now I'm still looking at the transaction, and so it should boost, I think, when gas prices come down in like the next hour or two, and then that will presumably pass then in 8 days, so that would be like next Thursday, Friday, and this would be pretty significant change to DXD. It would kind of make DXD a supply capped asset right now. Of course, DXDAO is ultimately in control of the bonding curve contract and of the DXD token, so it can kind of do whatever it wants. But governance would have to do something again to change the supply structure of DXD. So I think that could be a pretty big change. It's something that will probably have ripples as people look at DXDAO and now are like, oh, okay, well now it's a fixed supply cap. That was it for mainnet. I don't know if there are any thoughts, questions, comments on mainnet proposals. Cool. And then looking to XDAI, where there are 19 proposals that are boosted or pending boosting. So just like a whole bunch of governance going on XDAI. So there's 3 different rep boost syncs for Keenan, Caney Fork, or myself, and Venki. There are worker proposals for Keenan and Violet, Caden, and Federico. There is a payment for an audit for the Gnosis protocol relayer and swapper farming contracts proposal to Phil. I think that might be his first one that's on XDAI. Then there are a series of proposals related to funding swapper. So as a reminder, this needs to be, there's 2 separate proposals. There's one to fund the liquidity relayer to put the assets in there. And then there's a second proposal to take the assets from the liquidity relayer and put them directly into swapper. So there's the 4 pools or pairs that we're going after the WXDAI WETH, the WETH WBTC, WETH DPI, and then USDC WXDAI. The WETH WXDAI pool, I think, is actually that's all been deposited from this first wave. And so that's, I think, about $330,000 in liquidity in swapper XDAI WETH XDAI pool. And I think it is larger than HoneySwap, but maybe smaller than BowSwap, even though BowSwap doesn't get that much volume there. And then the other 3 pairs are in a series of proposals that they need to have the funding proposal to send them funds to the liquidity relayer, and then to get them put them directly into Swapper. And then I want to talk about that a little bit more in a second. But then just the last other proposal is there's a signal proposal. Should DXgov stake with an ETH 2.0 validator through Stakewise? And this is submitted by Nylon. I think Stakewise was on the BizDev call, I think, last Monday. So yeah, that's kind of the what's on XDAI now. Any thoughts, questions, comments, concerns on the open proposals on XDAI? I should say there was a proposal that was submitted after last week's call that also passed before this call, which is a pretty cool thing. So that was to change the fee on the House WETH pair on Swapper, and then to add House token to into the XDAI list. So House is a token. I guess it did a sale a couple weeks ago, but I guess it just kind of officially launched or got liquid or for tradable just on Monday. So they have an incentivized pool on HoneySwap, and Sky had been talking with them about getting some liquidity on Swapper, and particularly they were specific to wanting the higher fees. So the pool on Swapper has a 3% swap fee, and I think there's about $25,000 worth of House with liquidity. But I think more than anything, this was like a really great example of like fast acting governance of something that like this was a need that we wanted to have for this token launch very quickly. And the only way to get that proposal passed was to get a majority of rep. And so we did that twice within like I think 6 or 7 hours. So it's a nice accomplishment, and shows what we do when we have like a in tune governance on XDAI. Sky, I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that.
Yeah, not on that one specifically. I think it's cool that we could move that quickly. I know people have mentioned, so the DAO Alchemy platform is kind of turning into what it was built for, where there's like, let's say there's hundreds of proposals, like there's hundreds of regular proposals there, like there's tens, okay, but hundreds. It's actually, if you look at it, it's kind of hard to tell. Like, and so this is where like holographic consensus and like boosting the important ones or the real ones, the legit ones, is important in order to get them into like boosted proposals in order so that people can vote on them, because most people are not going to look through all the regular proposals. But because of that, even people that look at this on a regular basis, I think it's important and there's also people do mistaken proposals by accident sometimes. So I think it's important for people that create proposals to share the creation of their proposal and what it's about, even if it's a worker proposal or a rep boost or a rep sync or whatever, with like the community as much as possible. So like when you create a proposal, put that in the general chat or put in the DXer chat or put it somewhere and share it so that people know you actually just created that. Like it probably needs to be boosted, right? So if you're not going to boost it yourself and you need Jen to boost the proposal, and you know, some people are still learning this process, but if you just create a proposal and leave it there sitting as a regular proposal, it could literally just sit there for like 45 days and then disappear, right? It has to be boosted, but in order for someone to boost it, people have to know that it's a real proposal that should be boosted. And you can ask people to boost it, you can share it, but without that, I think it's just going to be a crowded mess of regular proposals.
I've got 2 quick thoughts about that. Chris says the government's proposals channel in Discord, which is a really good idea. And another thing directly related to worker proposals is we should be putting when our proposal is live on our draft. I think we used to do that, and I'm not seeing it a lot recently, and I'm not doing it. But if you put up a draft proposal and the proposal goes live, you should be saying, hey, it's live here.
And you're saying that on the DAO Talk thread, Keenan?
Yes.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah, Scott, this was actually something I wanted to talk about too. And I think we kind of hit the head this week because we've just had so many proposals kind of increasing, mostly because gas costs on XDI are not a concern. So we've kind of avoided this problem on mainnet the last couple months. And so I would say it's like, if you not just about people who submit a proposal, but if you want a proposal to pass, like you kind of have to like tell someone, right? And so there's a couple different ways to do that. Like one, you could buy Gen and stake it yourself and be like, I think this is a really important proposal. Or you could tell people, lobby people that are involved in governance, right? And I think people that are voting often or staking often, like these are people involved in governance. You can like ask them or like tell them that this is about, this is an important proposal and we want to like boost it or promote it. So like I have Gen on XDI, I have Gen on mainnet. Like I look through a lot of different proposals. I'm starting to even look through like technical proposals in terms of that. So if like anyone has any proposal that they're like, I submitted this proposal and of course, and I want to get it passed, reach out, kind of lobby someone to make that happen. And that's actually true. There's mainnet. There's one or two proposals on mainnet too that I wasn't even sure about. But and then related to that, I wanted to talk a little bit about holographic consensus and staking. And John had some posts in the governance channel on Keybase this morning about kind of the dynamics with boosting proposals. So since we have so many proposals now that are like going through XDI, that changes the amount of Gen you need to stay boosted dynamically changes based upon the number of boosted proposals, which can be tricky because when you're boosting a proposal, you're looking at the number of boosted proposals then, but the proposal is boosted or not dependent on the number of boosted proposals throughout, like even after you make that initial bet. So we had a little bit of trouble with that on some of the XDI proposals as they relate to swapper liquidity. Because remember, with swapper liquidity, we have like the two proposals. We have the liquidity relayer deposit proposal, and then the second one, and they need to go in that order, right? You can't deposit liquidity in swapper if it's not in the liquidity relayer. So one of the liquidity relayer funded deposits was submitted with enough Gen to be boosted initially, but then after like 12 hours or 16 hours, there were other proposals that got boosted, which meant that it no longer met the threshold for the amount of Gen needed to be boosted. So I think John re-upped a bunch of these proposals now, but that reset the clock on some of these boosted proposals. And I wanted to talk specifically about the WETH funding proposal, because the WETH funding proposal is now delayed. And that means we need to basically delay the the LP deposit proposal in the multi-call scheme one, because that needs to happen in conjunction. So I think this is kind of coordinating governance. We can kind of talk about how this plays out. But what I was hoping to do was to basically wait to vote on any of the multi-call scheme proposals that use the WETH from the delayed proposal. Wait until it is under 2 days to vote on it, so that when someone votes positively on it, then we kick off the new overtime, and that like pushes the potential date that the proposal will be executed to after the WETH proposal, which was delayed, goes through. And so remember when on DAOSAC, I guess it's holographic consensus, but when the end result of a vote changes, then it goes either from negative to positive, right? It goes from against to for, or for to against, or even goes from 0% no one voted on to positive, saying this will pass. That it kicks off a 48-hour clock that the proposal has to stay in that like passing state for that entire 48 hours. So if we don't vote on it, these proposals for the next couple of days, then we can, when we vote on it, that clock will be extended to after the WETH deposit proposal went through. I know it's kind of confusing, and I'm kind of trying to coordinate this, but questions or like comments about that. Let me paste a specific proposal in here that I'd be like, don't vote on until it matches up.
A cool feature in Alchemy would be if you could like put like notes on these things, and like who writes those notes, so you were able to like put a warning or put a flag or put a comment in an easy way.
These are good suggestions. I don't think they're going to be done in Alchemy.
We have no one to build Alchemy.
Yeah.
I can share my screen real quick and talk a little bit about how that boosting threshold works here. Just so like people can kind of like, so if I'm on the XDX app, people can see my screen, right? So if you go to plugins, funding and voting power is probably the one you're most likely going to be concerned with. You click into the scheme / or plugin, whatever you want to call it. The proposals are here, and so you can see the top section. These are the boosted proposals. There's 8 currently boosted, 9 pending boosting, right? So like, question that you need to ask yourself when you're boosting is like, how much gen is going to be needed to get it into the boosted state, right? And so the protocol is calculating how much gen is needed based on the number of boosted proposals when the thing actually boosts. So like, these are pending boosting. This one's set to boost in 6 hours, right? So the threshold that will like matter is like, will depend on how many are boosted in 6 hours, right? So like, how do we figure that out? So if we go to information tab, you see like some important parameters. There's a threshold constant down here. It's 1.2. That's like a number that gets used in the equation. And then there's this min DAO bounty. That's like how much the DAO is automatically downstaking a proposal. And then the equation that you have to do is 1.2 raised to the number of boosted proposals. And that's the ratio. Then you multiply that by 200 or whatever the current downstake is, right? So right now, if there's 8, it's like 1.2 raised to the 8. That's about like 4.3. And then you multiply that by 200, and that gives you 850, 860 about, right? So this one in 6 hours will need just more than 860. And it's got more than that. So this one's good, right? So, and I went through and made sure like all of these are good, but here it gets a little tricky because like you can see like these 3 proposals at the top are about to pass in about 11 hours. So the number of boosted ones will change when those pass, right? So like they're gonna pass ahead of this one. So that's gonna subtract 3 from 8, you get 5, but then this one will probably boost, so then you get 6. So this one actually only needs 1.2 raised to the 6, which is almost 3 times 200, so just under 600. So this one's like good too, right? So it's a little tricky to do the math, and you basically have to ask yourself, like, what is the boosted count going to be in 24 hours? But like, yeah, anybody trying to figure that out, like, feel free to like just ping the governance channel or whatever, and we can like talk through it if there's any confusion.
And that only applies to boosted proposals within that specific scheme?
Yeah, that's right. The scheme, like this, like threshold and calculation is done within each scheme, so it's a little different. Like there might be a different downstake on like a different scheme, like the automatic downstake from the DAO might not be 200 in a different scheme. I think the threshold constants tend to be 1.2 across the board, but they could be different as well. You should.
But the gen reward, I think, sometimes changes, but
the automatic is, yeah, you can think of it as a gen reward, but it's like the bounty. Yeah, it's like how much the DAO is automatically downstaking on any new proposal, and that's sort of an incentive an automatic incentive for people. Like, so 200 gen, I don't know, maybe it's worth like $40, $50 at current prices. And like, if you're the only upstaker on a proposal that passes and you get that 200 gen, which is something maybe we should also talk about, is like, once you get up to, there's like 15, 16 proposals like boosted or pending boosting. At that point, it takes 3,000 gen to boost something. So it starts to get a little expensive. Like the more, and this is by design, right? It's meant to like provide some constraints on like the throughput, right? But something that we should maybe keep an eye on or think about, because it could start to get, if that number doubles, it's an exponential too. So it gets like, let me just type in some numbers. Like if it's 20, now you're talking 7,600 gen. So we're not that far from like the cost to boost a proposal being like thousands of dollars, which is, I don't know if that's really where we want it to be. I think we can actually vote to configure the scheme and lower the automatic downstake. Because the other side of that too is the DAO is spending gen, right? So the DAO is like, good, we're going to run out of gen before too long in the DAO, and then the DAO will have to buy new gen.
You can also lower the threshold, like that
The threshold
variable
constant.
Yeah, so from 1.2 you can put it as 1. So like everything can be basically reduced, and I don't know, while we're at it, and Augusto's on this call, so he's going to be happy. Like we should look into using DXD for that. I'm not sure it's that simple, but yeah.
Yeah, I think buying gen is a no-go.
Yeah, we have a lot of DXD, and yeah, we have a DXD voting machine that I'm testing on DXvote and on Rinkebyte, and we have been using it. Yeah, the only change that I did was allowing on the voting machine that we are using, allowing to use other ERC20 token. Yeah, so a very simple change. So that can be possible in the future. Every scheme uses special voting machine. Right now, we are using the Genesis protocol voting machine that uses Gen. But yeah, that can be changed. And about the threshold, we were talking about it on a DAO Tag topic where Nico proposes a new multi-core installation. Maybe we can talk about it later. And I just mentioned that we can change the threshold if we are going to have a lot of proposals on a scheme, and a scheme is going to be very popular. I think it makes sense to use a lower threshold.
So there's the multiplier and the threshold, right? So those are the two. The
automatic downstake, and then, or the bounty, and then there's the threshold constant, which is the number which gets raised to the number of boosted proposals. So yeah. I
mean, I think it makes. I guess I don't like having that just be one, because I do like the idea of like it needing to. Like you want to have some constraint, but yeah, it does make you can see how it grows exponentially there too. And yeah, I'm all in favor of figuring out how to use DXD for this.
If we change it to 1.1 for the funding and voting, it would 30 boosted proposals would then correspond to about 3,500 gen to boost with a 200 downstake. So we could also, like, if we change the downstake, that's the other way we can change it.
Yeah. So by the way, the goal behind this is that, to increase the cost for someone to basically DDoS the DAO, which is important because in theory, like this could happen.
I also think the auto downstake creates an incentive for like people to pay attention as well, right? Because you're actually earning a reward when you're right.
Yeah, especially on XDAI, it's like you're not paying nothing for the transaction, so you're basically getting 250 gen right now, right?
200, yeah.
Yeah,
which is like $40 or so. It's a pretty good reward right now.
Totally, yeah.
So yeah, because it's like maybe I'm in favor, I guess, of now instead like the DDoS protection, and that's more of like the exponential like growth of it and making sure that that's intact, as opposed to like the base Yeah, maybe if we could lower it to like 100, 150, and then keep the 1.2 there. Yeah.
Yeah, even using a value like 1.05, something like that, where it's going to grow exponentially, it's going to protect you against DDoS. Which again, an attack on a mainnet, a DDoS attack on blockchain or mainnet, like it's something that sounds surreal, right? But this can happen because we use holographic consensus, and if you create a proposal and no one votes on it, it will be triggered, it will be executed, like it will be accepted. Or even a small voter can go there and create a shit ton of proposals, and we are going to have to go through each of them. Even if I take one rep on each proposal, I can make sure that I'm going to create enough proposals to cause so much pain in the ass for the DXgov holders that are going to go and have to dump stake all of them. So yeah, I think that is extremely unlikely to happen, and we are using a very high threshold, so we should be good with a very low one.
Yeah, sorry, Augusto, if we maybe repeat ourselves. Like, what is exactly needed to get to replace Gen with DXD?
What we need to do is to deploy a DXZ voting machine and use that voting machine in the new schemes. Like we will have to deploy, for example, on the new multi-call scheme that we are planning to deploy, maybe we can use a DXZ voting machine for a special scheme. That is something that we can explore later.
I think that is something that is fairly simple to do with a new DAO. Like with an existing DAO, it's kind of like getting into the guts of the contracts. But with like a complete new DAO, like if, I don't know, the next space is going to be on Matic or Arbitrum, like it will be fairly easy to deploy it with that.
Yeah, I think like Elon, correct me if I'm wrong, but we need to basically work on this DAO stack subgraph to get our own voting machine in.
Yeah, the main problem here, what I see right now, that we can make something that is going to work on mainnet. Like it is quite simple, but then we will have to update Alchemy and the subgraph and the changes to use DXZ for the staking, yada, yada, yada. So yeah, of course, everything can be possible if you deploy an entire new DAO, but the idea will be to try to avoid that and try to find a workaround.
Yes, Augusto, I think that means like we basically are depending on DXvote to be there to have like DXD staking token.
Yes, this is what is using right now on Rinkeby. If you need you need Gen on XDAI or on mainnet on Rinkeby, you go to DX Trust in Rinkeby and you buy DXD super cheap, and then you can use it for staking. So it is actually how it's working on Rinkeby, and it's working fine. Just as you work with Gen, you use DXD Rinkeby. And yeah, we need to figure out how we're going to use, if we figure out an XDAI bridge for DXZ on XDAI, we can use DXZ for staking on XDAI once we have DXvote deployed on XDAI.
Got it. Is that part of your like goals for DXvote?
100%, yes. That was always the goal, to use DXZ as voting machine token. I think will be a huge success because it will give DXZ our first real use case. Like, okay, what do you use DXZ for? Right now, you use it for anything because there is no DXZ guild. Like, you just have a stake on our organization. But here it will create some appreciation because you are going to need DXZ to support proposals.
Cool. It's always interesting when we just to learn about the system just because we're running on it and answering questions on like how to get things done. So it's good to know, how everything works. I want to get to the new multi-call installation in a second that Augusto mentioned. But yeah, I just wanted to move to HR check-in. So Melanie, who I think is on the call, has been I think her worker proposal trial draft was, I think, submitted at the end of last week, beginning of this week. She's been on a couple calls, I think, talked to a couple different people, and yeah, we're trying to work on some improvements to the worker proposal process, helping people along and tracking things better. So Melanie, I don't know if you wanted to kind of give a brief update on what you've been up to.
Yeah, definitely, guys. And then for those of you who don't know me, I'm Melanie. Like Chris stated, I did submit my worker proposal on DAO Talk on Monday. And so if you want to go check it out, if you haven't, but I just wanted to give you kind of an update on what we've been doing in HR, or, the contributor experience. We're kind of thinking of a new name for it. But for the past week, Allie, my counterpart, and I have been working on tracking for current and past worker proposal submissions. In addition, we've been tracking the DXD vesting proposals, DXD payments, and rep distribution. We are working on an alert system of how we plan to contact each of you and let you know when your next proposals are due. For now, it'll be a pretty manual process we put in place until we figure out a more permanent and scalable solution to notifying everyone. From the data we've captured so far, a lot of you guys are late on your next worker proposal submission, but we're working on that and getting that all figured out. I've also started on standardizing our onboarding. I'm going to be setting up meetings, like Chris stated, if I haven't already, with all of you to get your input on where we can improve on the onboarding process. I know at the moment there isn't a consistent process that is being used to bring on each new contributor. For example, everyone introduces themselves in the introductions on Keybase and attends meetings, and then has a copy of our contributor guidelines. But really, once it's past that point, it seems as if there's no set process for incoming contributors. While this weeds out the not as strong candidates, I think it's a little unfair. I think we need a consistent orientation to make each new contributor feel more comfortable, and it'll really help them adapt to our ecosystem, and it'll really promote communication and confidence with DXDAO. So I'm definitely going to be leaning on you guys over the next few weeks or so, just to get some more information about what changes you guys think need to be made to just the overall onboarding process and bringing new contributors in. Definitely, I want to be able to lend my experience and expertise to you all, just to make everything a little bit easier and just to kind of avoid any confusion for new contributors coming on. But yeah.
Thanks, Adam. I think that is a good idea. Maybe we need some, was it GPT-3 or the AI to write the proposals for everyone? Yeah, I think, it's really exciting. And so in addition to Melanie, so Allie, who I think Keenan introduced, has also been helping a little bit part-time on this. And so she's helping with some of the data entry there. And yeah, I think this is like a really, it's kind of just about like building more communication channels, because all of this is like, how do we communicate across different people in the org, where it's not hierarchical, where it's not kind of coming elsewhere. And so yeah, I'm hoping that we can gather some feedback on this and surface some things that we can work on.
Yes, sorry, I just also wanted to say that the idea here is also to have someone that will be responsible for keeping track of how many workers are we having in the organization right now, and who is working on what, and how much is getting paid, and how much money is owned. And I think something very important that we have that we talked a lot last month regarding that the topic was brought regarding my worker proposal, where we analyze and we talk about my deliverables, if I deliver what I say that I was going to deliver on my proposal or not. So it was a huge discussion about that. And I think it would be awesome if we can also start keeping track of our deliverables and start measuring how our work is in our DXgov internally. I'm not going I'm not going to do it. I think it's very time consuming, right, to analyze someone's work. But it will be great if we can find a way where it's not going to consume our time of our workers, but we can find time about how valuable is being each worker for DXgov, because there is a lot of people, and we need to define how. It would be great to have some sense of value, how much everyone is giving back to DXgov.
Yeah, did you guys see a product from Yearn, Collaborate?
No, Coordinate, I think.
Oh shit, okay. And that's actually like, I think we should like look into what they're doing, even if like they just use GitHub, which we also use. Like maybe that's totally fine, but maybe it is useful for us because it's like showcase how there's like how those developers are actually working together through GitHub.
There are a lot of tools on GitHub that we can use to track project development, like a lot of stuff. GitHub has improved a lot on the project development, at least tracking of what is happening. Like you can create issues and tasks for everything. So I think it will be very helpful for us to start using GitHub more oftenly on sharing on what we are working on, our code reviews, even for not technical people to get involved. That is something that I'm going to try to pursue on DXgov, to get common users, for example, like Chris, Tammy, Sky, who are not developers, to get a GitHub account and review the work that is going to be done on DXgov, and they are going to say, hey, what is happening here? Because we need final users to review our tasks, not just another developer. Another developer is fine, but it would be great if we can start using it more in the community.
For the record, I do have a GitHub account. But I know I think it's a good idea, and I know Melanie can maybe answer this better, but I kind of see this as like basically like first we need to like figure out what's happened, right? We need to like track everything that's kind of gone on the last several months, because we've put it down in proposals, right? In the forums, and so we kind of know it's there, but we don't have a way of kind of seeing everything. That's kind of like understanding like what we've done and then figuring out like a system for incorporating new proposals, kind of additional ones. And then it's kind of, I think what you're talking about in terms of tracking and performance is in that like new system that we do. So I'm hoping that's what we kind of move to next as we get a understanding of like our retrospective activity over the last few months.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, right now we're really we're going through all of like the current and past proposals and just like identifying areas that like need to be improved. You mentioned deliverables. I think that needs to be on everybody's proposal so we can easily track, what deliverables have been completed and which ones haven't. Definitely a lot of kind of missing pieces, but I can, I really want to be able to lend a hand. If people have questions, Adam, of course you can hire me to help with your proposal. I want to walk you through it. I want it to be like an easy task, something that's not daunting. This is something that you have to submit every 2 months, whether we all really like it or not. So let's figure out a way to make it easier.
Yeah, I would also argue that the working groups themselves can judge about people who contribute inside those working groups if they actually delivered what they promised. So I think that is already like a bottom-up approach, which works pretty fine. Like I know my own team is doing a lot of hard work.
Definitely. Cool. So excited to see that go forward, and hopefully everyone will benefit and gain some ease of, kind of make everyone's lives a little bit easier. So cool. And then, next wanted to talk about a new multi-call scheme installation. So Nico has a post out about installing a new multi-call scheme that would change a couple different things and kind of split it up into 3 different components or 3 different types or tracks, I guess, of proposals. Augusto had some good follow-up questions there, and the thread is on DAO Talk. So Nico, do you want to kind of give the background on that and what we should be looking at?
Yeah, definitely. Like I'm sharing my screen in a sec about what we are actually proposing. But firstly, maybe it makes sense to get some background about it, what we've been using the multi-call in the past. So basically, multi-call has been installed, I think it was late December that we installed it. So beginning from this year on, we used it to actually be able to interact with external contracts that we have been using dedicated plugins before. So that basically meant before we had the multi-call, whenever we wanted to interact with any kind of smart contract, we had to develop a new plugin that would exclusively speak to that protocol and be installed. And the idea there with the multi-call was basically to allow to have kind of a whitelist of contracts that can be spoken to within one plugin. And we cannot only just execute one transaction with one proposal, but also multiple actions within one proposal. That was the idea. And back in the days, we decided to keep it relatively easy to also like to enable us to monitor the proposals relatively easy because of security concerns, etc. And while that was probably like a first good step, it now makes sense to work on a new structure that gives us a bit more flexibility. And Augusto has also been sharing that idea later last year. And I think it's a good time to get that started and help us get a bit more flexibility here. Yeah, so as mentioned, we would not use one multi-call in the future, but basically install 3 different kind of multi-calls. One of them is what we call a quick multi-call. So that would basically allow us to create and execute proposals within 3 days. So we would probably want to use that for product-specific proposals, for example, updating a release, updating an ENS domain, or for example, updating repositories on Radical, something like that, that is not really critical from the governance perspective. Then we would have a safe multi-call, which is basically the one that we are currently using. So within 8 days, we would be able to kind of approve and find consensus about DXgov overall governance proposals. And then the third one is an open multi-call. And the big difference here is why quick and safe multi-calls would still use a whitelist that need to be defined when we install the multi-call. The open multi-call would be able to speak with any kind of protocol that we want to. The only thing is that we would set it to the governance parameters that it's pretty slow. So it would take 14 days to find consensus about it, unless we would find, of course, like absolute majority. We could also execute proposals faster. That's the basic idea. So we have what, like, if we need something that needs to be executed fast, we could add it on the whitelist of this quick multi-call. And if there is something new that we haven't thought about, we could still use this open multi-call, even though it's a bit low. Yeah, that's the structure. And then some notes. There are still some limitations that we currently have, and that needs to be researched on. Is that we actually are currently not able to transfer any kind of ETH or any ERC20 tokens transferred or either approve it. So that is currently something that is really exclusively limited to this funding proposal plugin. So whenever like we want to speak to another protocol and send funds or approve something on another protocol, we would still have to use that. It's less like a technical complexity, more like a security concern, and we want to make sure that the DXgov treasury is not at risk. So that's something we currently do not support.
Nico, that's like with the swapper liquidity, that's why there's like 2 different proposals, right? There's like a funding proposal that is sending the funds, and so you're proposing basically the same thing here, where any multi-call proposal that would require funds would presumably need a second corresponding funding proposal.
Exactly. Yep. That's like the current structure as we would propose it here. But I'm also aware that this is like a bigger restriction, and we should focus on building up a possible solution, or researching at least how that could work in the next releases or generation of a multi-core. Cool. Yeah. So that's like the DAO talk post. There are some technical parameters that we are trying to find consensus about. I would be happy if we maybe could today or tomorrow at latest get all of the feedback from the community about that governance parameters, and then move forward and go and install it on Alchemy and make sure we get those plugins installed soonish. Any questions?
And you do have a poll in the, I think, reply here, and I guess I'm just looking at that, and I feel like we actually kind of discussed that a little bit, and that's earlier, and that's asking about the threshold constant for the multi-call scheme. So this would be what like increases what we were talking about earlier about increases the amount of gen that's needed to stake.
Exactly. Yeah.
Augusto, you had
Yeah.
or Nylan, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm just like maybe my wonderings is around the open multi-call, and do we feel safe with 14 days? Because theoretically, if any proposal passes there, it could, with one proposal or like with one past proposal, could essentially steal all the funds, all the treasury, and everything. So
it wouldn't. I thought that it wouldn't be able to move funds.
Exactly. Yeah, it's restricted. We currently do restrict on all of those three kind of proposals, moving ETH and any kind of ERC20.
Oh, okay. So is it using the global constraints, or?
It's using the generic scheme constraints.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, we feel safe. If you can do this, you can steal everything with the contribution reward right now, if you want.
Also true.
Yeah, I mean, it's exactly the same. We have been using, and we had this option forever and ever. You were always if you can find a way around our governance to steal everything. It was always possible. But
so the difference here is that you could make a proposal that implies that you're doing A, but it actually does something completely different, which eventually steals the funds.
Well, here is where we need to figure out something that we are going to be able to review what is going to happen on the proposal, like to simulate, to decode the calls, all the stuff. This is what we need on the UI level to be 100% sure that the proposal is going to do what it is proposed. But yeah, I feel safe. I mean, it was always the option to steal our funds, and no one did it because we were watching it. And if we have an open multi-call that we're able to decode and know exactly what is going to happen and simulate the outcome, there is no reason for us to feel insecure.
Yeah, I think it makes sense to have the fund transfers limited to a single scheme, which is the contribution reward scheme, just so that, because I think the safety is really about voter attention, right? Like it's all about people understanding what is happening. And because as long as voters are paying attention, we should be in good shape. And so that's why I think having it in one scheme makes sense. And yeah, I don't think 14 days is like something to feel scared. Like I'm not too worried about that either. Like I agree with Augusto there. Like it's longer than the funding one. It's also about the same as adding a new plugin. So it sort of already exists to some degree. Yeah, I guess that would be a two-step process, but if you could add any plugin in like 15 days, then you can also pretty much do anything, right? So.
Yeah, so I'm trying to kind of like think forward with like the stake-wise proposal. Theoretically, we like it is like what you want to register is an open multi-call, but because we cannot transfer funds, like we still wouldn't be able to use that for, let's say, we wanted to stake in stake-wise.
Yeah, that's definitely like the one missing piece. That is currently not possible. So whenever we actually want to transfer funds, we need some kind of like intermediary contract. But I mean, still that could be like a next iteration of the multi-call we could research on, and like I think there are some possible ideas there as well. But yeah, still we wouldn't really be able to stake or provide liquidity or whatever we want to do in the DeFi space without currently the need of writing intermediary smart contracts, which is for the long-term vision, what we want to achieve through governance, probably not the best situation, but it could be just an iteration we're working on.
Cool. Yeah, post is up. Anything else on the multi-call scheme?
Just a call to action if there is anything on that list or anything missing from that list that you'd like or think we should be interacting with, like now is the time to suggest it before we get to proposals and stuff that cost money and take time to install. So yeah, if there's anything that you think is missing, it goes for anybody here, just like say something.
Yeah, may do that. The only one I was thinking of is like 1 inch that we don't have on there. It's like we have the Gnosis protocol and swapper liquidity, but maybe we don't need that. Cool. All right. So check out the Talk thread. Anything that we may be missing. And yeah. All right. Moving on. Just to brief update on gas stuff. So talk with Dave a bit. And so today is the last of the month and the last of the quarter. So at the end of the month, we're going to calculate the last 3 months of gas cost and then deploy a contract and fund that. And we're going to do that on mainnet because that's where people will be funding, and that's where people are paying the cost for that. And I think we'll probably get into the habit of doing this every 3 months, I think, just to maybe save on gas costs. But once we do it this time, I think we can we could talk about next time there. And then on the multi-sig gas costs, Dave, I think, is also going to recalculate it at the end of the month now. And so we'll have those like gas cost there. And we'll be able to reimburse those through that. And Dave's also been working pretty sweet on some like treasury stuff, pulling a lot of cool data and looking up the DXgov treasury, and not just like the one we're talking about here, but also like XDA, and then we have the buyback reserve, which now has USDC in it. And yeah, so next Thursday, to plug a little bit, we'll be presenting a treasury report on the Q1 activity there. And yeah, hopefully that will spark some conversation about what we're kind of doing with the treasury. And I know there's been a lot of good discussion lately, whether it's the staking or like earning additional yield. I really liked what Sky said in the treasury channel this morning, just of kind of like the list of things we want to do. So Sky, I was gonna share my screen and see if you wanted to kind of talk through that quickly.
Sure. So I was just, I had missed the Monday call where there's a lot of good discussions about DX yield, DX degen in general. And I just categorized it into like risk taking, which was Chris kind of mentioned on the call too, but let's say we'll call it a risk ladder from now on. And I think as we all know, it started from like the early beginnings of, there was a DAO and there was no money. There were a few people and there was no money. And so like, how do you climb a risk ladder from there? And I just listed the steps that DXDAO actually, took. And you can see with the check marks, the ones that we accomplished, where actually the DAO raised capital, and then it got comfortable with holding capital, right? Which these are all things that like most DAOs in the world have never done, and most people in the world have never done. So these are not like easy things, right? So a DAO has to be able to hold capital, and then the DAO started using that capital to build products and grow. And then we realized, we knew all along that, like, and I've seen this with many projects in the space where everything was held in a risky asset. So everything was held in ETH and DXD, and those are very risky assets, especially when your costs of growth and building are in dollars. So the first step is to practice smart risk management, and that's secure some runway for your project. And therefore, we started turning some ETH capital into stable dollar capital, right? Just basic stable dollar capital. Alongside that secures runway, but then that's also the product, the type of assets that we can use in the products that we're building. So especially Swapper and also Omen markets, we're mainly using, part of our risky assets plus the dollar stable assets that we've acquired. And so we start to use the capital that we have in our own products, which we've built, which do a few things. It actually, like, earns some yield. We don't know how much yield, but there's more than that. Like in Omen, for example, like Omen Squad, I don't think has made money, but it's allowed people to, we're learning a lot of lessons. People can use Omen product. It's good for marketing, so you can move capital around that way. But it's really like uses in our products. And then the next step related to our products would be to really use our capital for yield farming, so incentives. And that's obviously something that has been hugely popular in the last year. It's giving out capital or ownership in your protocol in order to attract users. Now, is that sustainable in the long run? No one really knows, but most projects are doing it. And so DXDAO has the ability to do that. And then the next thing, which we now have established, is to use the capital that we have to invest and build important projects outside of DXDAO that we think would be beneficial to DXDAO. And so that is the establishment of DX Ventures. We haven't made an investment yet, but we're like getting close, maybe on a couple. But that's a great use. And then these are all getting more advanced and riskier as we go up this ladder, right? And then the next one would be like holding yield earning assets instead of just plain like either risky and dollar stable assets. And so the simplest basic version of that, which people have talked about, is something like Compound and Aave. So like if we're going to hold $2 million in DXDAO that's just going to sit there as like a runway that maybe not even for payroll, but just kind of sits there, you'd rather hold it in Compound or Aave DAI than just normal DAI, because then at least you're earning some interest. But at the same time, Compound and Aave are pretty safe. Like they've been around for a long time. People are pretty confident. Theoretically, you can buy insurance on them too, which is relatively cheap. But you have the plan to hold those for a long time. So because DXDAO doesn't move very fast, holding those assets long term is like if you hold Aave earning DAI, you don't need to switch between every week. Like you could literally hold that for 5 years and that you'll be fine for 5 years, right? So that would be like the next step. And then you can go up the risk ladder to like something like Y-Earn, and you can hold Y-Earn for like 2 years and still be fine, right? Once you put an allocation there, you can just hold it. That's fine. And then the next thing would be like taking more risk that's more dynamic with your capital. And I don't know if you guys have checked out DHedge. It's actually pretty super cool. Enzyme, I think, which Nico told me about, is similar. And these are like actual traders trying to add alpha with whatever capital you are assigning to them. But I think this is the future of hedge funds, where the actual trader doesn't have your capital. Like you own your capital, and now the risk, the trader, the person you give your capital to can't take your money, but they can take massive risk with your money, right? And so then the question is, how much money do they have in this actual fund? And if they have, say, like 50% of the fund and they're taking risk with their own money, then you should be more confident that they're going to be safe, like, you know, smarter with that risk. They're not just going to like go for the fences. And so you can actually allocate a portion to like some of those funds, and that should give you like an uncorrelated alpha in addition as like a percentage of your portfolio, which would be super cool. Like that's like smart, like overall portfolio diversification. And you can hold that long term. And then the next thing is kind of what was talked on the call is like, what can DXDAO do to like act like a hedge fund? Who at DXDAO is going to actually do that? How fast can DXDAO actually move in and out of yield farming assets? And I'd say that this is similar to what like apparently we've heard Gnosis is doing with like their internal Gnosis hedge fund. Now, they're not doing it as a DAO. They have like a handful of people or a couple people that are like doing yield farming with Gnosis's funds. Now that's very hard for DXDAO to do, and you have to trust those people probably. So like that's way down the line after we do all this other stuff before you start doing like active risk taking, like in and out with DXDAO's funds. And then the last step is the initial vision of DXDAO, which DAOstack and Gnosis had laid out from the beginning, is that like DXDAO theoretically could become the largest financial organism in the world. So that's the summary of taking more and more risk as we go through time. But we're far away from number 10, which is have a team of people that are like looking at this all day long and actively taking risk with DXDAO's capital in my view.
I do like the jump from 10 to 11 though. Just 11, and then DXDAO is the largest financial organism in the world. Yeah, and then I mean, the things I like about this is just kind of the idea of doing a lot, right, and kind of building up the risk tolerance and expanding where the treasury is going. Martin's making some good points in there about putting it across chains and different bases, which I think we're on our way to doing now. I might move 7 above 6, but that's like maybe the same thing, right? We may be ready to put in some yielding assets, I think, like pretty soon. And yeah, I mean, I think like we're really talking about this right now. I think like these are the 6 through 9. These are the things that we should be talking about trying to do and come up with a plan. And then yeah, ETH staking is obviously in this. I guess I don't like with most things with ETH. I'm not sure like where that falls as a financial product, but like, yeah, I think it's in this group.
So on ETH staking, I love the idea of it, and I think it's awesome for the DAO to do it. I'm still not 100% sure on like where the money sits and like who's running the validator and that kind of stuff. And it's not, I from the presentation by Stakewise, like sounds cool. Like, all right, let's do it with some like a little bit of ETH, but like to see what it's like, that's the best way to learn. But like, how many people here have personally done that? And if you've personally done it, can you please explain exactly how it works to DXDAO? And if you're comfortable with it, right? Because I don't know, there's a few people here that might be staking ETH, and I think they're doing it on their own, but using a third party to do it, like,
yeah,
like, it sounds to me like BlockFi, and I hate BlockFi. Like people that talk about BlockFi all the time. It's like, give BlockFi your crypto and then hope that they give it back to you. That's not a very good crypto model, right?
Yeah. I would say before the Stakewise presentation, I thought it was impossible. And now I'm like open maybe to the idea that you could do this in a third party, like somewhat trustless way. And so maybe, yeah, it's more in the degen category of kind of like yield farming if it is kind of that level of risk. But like, I mean, I don't know. This is kind of our broader thing about what we need to figure out how to like connect to infrastructure in some way, I think. That's like a long-term, I think, for DXDAO to have some type of organic contribution system of infrastructure providers. Yeah, I think they said there were 2 people and maybe Sky, MPC is now going to be the answer to everything. It's like one of those.
MPC, which is multi-party computation, is the only way to do truly trustless, decentralized, like key management. And this is what all the big exchanges do. Like, there's a reason why someone at Binance or Gemini can't like team up with 2 people and like steal all the money from Gemini, right? Because they don't. No one has the full key. But what we want, and there's a team that came and talked to us about it, is like you basically need to have a DAO version of multi-party computation in order to do decentralized key management. So like the actual DAO, like all members of the DAO, like 100 different members of the DAO could actually all hold a tiny piece of a key and actually like run infrastructure with that key, basically, or the security.
Be so cool. Cool. Yeah, so we're kind of over the hour here. Obviously, people have left to go to the Omen meeting. So yeah, any other parting thoughts?
Yeah, one last thing from me. I'd mentioned to you last night, and I guess no one's here now, but it's the last day of the quarter. So I'm going to take a snapshot of the current participation in the DXDAO Discord and probably work with you, Chris, on the numbers and proposing what kind of rep we should be distributing and how much, et cetera, per tier. But that is underway. So those of you that don't know, there's a 90-day callback to participation on the Discord. So I propose that we take snapshots each quarter and distribute some rep alongside our rep boosts for that. So that's being done today. And I'm hoping to share more information either on the rep boost thread or in a thread to precede that on DAO Talk.
Yeah, awesome. And yeah, I just think it's building out an engagement Discord is so important. So yeah, I think it will be just the beginning. There's also like source cred, which would be a much more like systematic way of doing it. But I think we just need to figure out how to like engage with those that are engaging with us. Yeah,
and since XDXDAO is now funded, claiming and also voting with that rep is now possible. Like we can actually have the community participate, which is amazing.
And we should there's 19 proposals now, right, that are like $0 to vote on. So like, yeah, it's we're kind of back to trying to get this engagement because it's now economically feasible for us to do it, for everyone to do it.
Yeah, I'd spoke with John about it. I've always been interested in participating in governance, but I'm sure I started right at the start of the whole run, and Gwei was already like 250 when I started here. I'm like, Jesus, I can't really do anything here. So I'm really happy to get involved with upstaking, downstaking, voting now, and the rep syncs have been great to see from myself and everyone else that submitted them.
Just looking, we're over 300 Gwei right now. The super proposal, I was like just before gas prices changed. Anyway, all right. Thanks, everyone.
Take care, guys.
Yep. See ya.